Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chef Hako. I don't think I've ever shown up in YouTube. It's just not my thing. But I'm here on a personal mission, so to speak, because I want to bring attention and I want to make sure that this message is sent to all the Cuban Americans and all the Cuban nationalities other than Cuban nationalities, Spaniards or Portugal or Australia, wherever we are at, and we are everywhere, unfortunately. As you all know, or maybe this is the first time, but Cuba is undergoing a major internal revolution that has never happened for 62 years. For 62 years, we have been under a regime and under a Castro hold that has broken families, has caused a lot of pain to a lot of people around the world, a lot of Cubans, I would say, around the world, where some of us have not met or have not seen our relatives for 50, 60 years. Some of us, our families passed away, never saw them. And those lucky, such as I, that was able to leave the country at a small age, 9 years old, and come to this great, unbelievable country, and with my parents, we were blessed. But this is where I come in right now, and in particularly, I want to address this message to all those Cubans around the world that are within the age, I would say probably in the 20s and 30s, but that some of them did not experience life in Cuba, and others experienced life in Cuba through the eyes of their parents. Understand, this younger generation, my daughter, my son, does not understand what happened in Cuba, does not understand the revolution. Frankly, they could care less, because they didn't have to go through that. They didn't have to suffer. They didn't have to subject themselves to such pain and such hatred that this Castro regime has imposed on people for so many years. So this calling is to these lucky generation that were either born in other countries from Cuban parents, or were came to the United States, to another country after being born in Cuba. But that age, and the reason I say that age is very important, is because for us Cubans and our children and that age group, unless they lived in Cuba during this regime, they don't understand. They have no idea. But they have, most of them, even though a lot of them probably don't speak Spanish anymore, because they're used to another life, and that's totally understandable. But most of them, I am sure, have heard somewhere along the line the pain, the suffering, the desire for their grandparents or their parents had to one day return, to one day be free, to one day say, ay, si pudiera tomarme un café en mi Cuba. and that never came about. That never happened for those people like my parents that died with that dream. Why is this a calling? This is a calling because Cuba is under circumstances that have never been seen before, or have been seen before but had never been seen with a global eye. This regime has kept everything under wrap for many, many years, but the secret is out. They're criminals, they're assassins. They don't care for their own people. They have violated every single human right you can possibly imagine. Not now, not in the last couple of years. No, from 1962 on. I know. I was 6 years old and I was in prison with Castro for 1 week. My sister was 12 years old and she was with me. Only difference was my sister at 12 years old would be called at 2 and 3 in the morning for interrogations and will be threatened that she would not see my parents and that she would not see me, or she would no longer be part of the family if she did not talk against my mother and father as to how we tried to leave the country. So I know violation of human rights. I know it firsthand. But that's just a minor thing. I was a boy. I was at 6 years old, and I lived it. I experienced it, but not to the extreme that the world is now seeing. Not to the extreme where you're going to bed hungry. You're dying every day because of COVID, because of lack of medicine. You are walking in the streets claiming libertad, 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 and you are picked up at home and imprisoned for what could be 4 or 5 years for some sort of stupidity as expressing your own rights and the desire to be free. Cuba needs us. The only place where Cuba can be resolved is in Cuba. But Cuba needs us because we are the voice, we are the eyes, we are that communication between Cuba and the rest of the world that was not there before. That's why I applaud and I stand behind Alain el paparazzi cubano. I stand behind Giovanni Sanchez for having the guts and the balls to do what she's done for so many years right now. But despite their efforts, we're still under that hold. Despite their efforts, they still have the Castro regime or Diaz-Canel, Singao Diaz-Canel, still has or think they have that stronghold where they can contact a country like Panama and tell them to shut our citizens simply because they're expressing their desire of liberty and their free press, their freedom of free press. They're not saying any lies. They're not hiding anything. Everything is there. Why do they feel threatened? They feel threatened because for the first time in 62 years, they finally realize it's over. It's over. And I owe it to my father, my daughter, my son. We owe it to our grandparents, to our fathers, to make sure that we support Cuba, because a lot of us still have families, and whether or not we have families or not, this is the time to do the right thing. I know a lot of you might be in a university, might be spending time at Ohio State, at Notre Dame, God knows where, Universidad de Barcelona, who knows where, and you don't have the slightest idea where Cuba is. But your parents are Cuban. And now is the time for you guys, for 1 minute, to realize You are there because of the sacrifice that our parents made to get us to where we are at. Now we have to see that dream of our parents come to fruition. I know there's not much we can do, but there's a lot we can do getting the word out. There's a lot we can do letting people know the inhumane conditions that Cuba is. Letting people know that our country, for the first time in 62 years, across the country from one end to the other, the country voiced their opinion, asking for freedom, asking for libertad. They weren't asking for medicine. They weren't asking for food, even though they're starving and they're going hungry and their children haven't had milk in 3 years of their birth. They weren't asking for that. They were asking for libertad. Leave me the fuck alone and let me do what I want to do. We can take care of ourselves is given the opportunity, not having some country, some government dictate to our people. So what can we do and what are we doing? We are promoting and we are getting the word out. Those of you guys that don't remember our Cuba, that's understandable. But do it for our parents, do it for your grandparents, do it for those that made those sacrifices to get you to where you are at today. Whether you're Cuban American or you Cuban Italian or you're Cuban Australian or whatever you are, wherever you are at, it is your human right duty to let these people live, to promote what is going on. Cuban government has shut down Wi-Fi, has shut down the Cuban people from the world again. Because of social networking, because of that opportunity that Cuban people had about, I guess maybe 7 years ago, they awoke. They realized the conditions under where they live versus the conditions of where the world lives. They realized they had no freedom of expression. They didn't realize that before because they were dumb, they were stupid, they didn't realize before because they were indoctrinated. They were told ever since they were born that they didn't have to pray, that they had to bow to Fidel Castro and to Che Guevara, not to Jesus Christ. And they were taught that the U.S. was the Yankee imperialismos, out to no good. Out to no good. Right. A country that has done good all over the world. Biden recently promised or wanted to give vaccines to the entire country of Cuba. What did that government say? We don't need it. We have our own way of taking care of our people. Yep. Incinerating our people in Holguin, using horse carriage as ambulances, and killing people in their bedside because they're almost dead, so they might as well use the oxygen for somebody else that might have a chance. All these atrocities, all these issues have been going on for years. But now the world sees it. It is the time. It is our momentum. We cannot change Cuba. The Cuban people can change Cuba, but we can certainly help. We can certainly help. Whether you're in Argentina or Brazil, Berlin, anywhere you are in the world, check YouTube. Hashtag SOS Cuba. Educate yourself and educate others around the world, because now it's the time to have the memory of our parents and to be able to live the dream of our parents. Stop fucking around with these motherfuckers. We have to make it. We owe our parents. We owe our grandparents. And all we can do is promote it, sell it, let people know. Because it is not right. It is not fair for one government to have not only a stronghold on people, but have the right to decide whether you live or die. SOS Cuba. Hit the social networks. Please. First time I ever do a video of any kind on any social network. But our country needs it. Our relatives, whether there or whether passed away, needs it. And our country needs it. Thanks for your listening. Patria y libertad. SOS, Cuba.